Welcome on this course about RxJS. I know when people hear RxJS, they think Angular, but here it has nothing to do with Angular. It has everything to do with reactive programming. So we're going to spend during this course time rebuilding RxJS as a way to learn the mechanism behind observable and what we basically call reactive programming. So how do we do that? So the way we're going to do that is going to be really simple and practical. So let me show you something quickly here. In the code, we have here at the top, you see I'm importing RxJS right there. And one thing we're going to do is to show you how RxJS works. In a few minutes, I will remove that dependency and we're going to rebuild whatever we use there from scratch. By doing so, you will actually learn the inner working of RxJS. So before I go there, I would like to explain a few concepts theoretically so that you understand what we're dealing with. Once again, it has nothing to do with Angular. It's about reactive programming. So let me explain this concept in drawing. There are a few keywords we're going to be dealing with during this entire series. The first one is the concept of data stream. The question there is, what is a data stream? What do you hear when I say data stream? You can think of data stream as anything that produces data. For example, a click on the button in a browser create data saying something has been clicked. Emit data, by the way, it's called event. When I'm writing click here, I'm referring to event handlers and so on and so forth. There are many things that you can think about. For example, you're connected on the chat, and a chat, for example, send data at the time the data are available. So it's a stream, it's a constant stream of data unless someone disconnect from their channel. But even if they disconnect from their channel and messages come in, the message will be queued, and then whenever the person connect on the other side, they will receive all these messages because it's a stream of data coming continuously right there. So that is already the first keyword there, is like data stream. The other one is going to be observer. So what is an observer? Observer, you can think of it as someone who has the possibility to actually do something with incoming data, right? And they can consume it. But the point there is, whenever the data comes in, they're able to say, data comes in, let me do something with it, okay? And then the next one we're going to mention here is this idea of asynchronous, async. So when I say async, in the JavaScript world, you think promises and so on and so forth. It actually goes beyond that. It's just the idea of like, when you send a message, you don't know when that thing is going to happen. You just have to subscribe, and that's going to be the next keyword we're gonna be using. The async part says, hey, I'm sending you a message, and that message might not arrive right away. It might take a different route here and there, but it's going to be there at some point or another. And if it doesn't happen, if the message doesn't arrive, you will either have an error or like a complete sign. So when I say observer here, there's something I need to mention. An observer is basically, in a strict term of in code speaking, it's just a set of three functions. One is called next, that will take data and send that to the next listener, basically the person who subscribed there. And then the next one is error, which basically is used as a way to say, hey, there is an error in that stream. Let's stop everything. I'll show you that in code in a few seconds. And the last one is complete, right? You can already imagine what complete does, right? And then the last keyword that I would like to mention here is subscription. So the idea of subscription is there's a set of data coming in. That data, you can only access it only if you actually subscribe to it, right? It's like you have messages coming through, a lot of messages are coming, like think of your phone and the notification on your phone. There are plenty of them that you don't receive because you didn't subscribe to them. But doesn't mean that these data aren't being produced, right? For example, on my desktop, I have no notification coming in. I don't have this little thing coming. Whenever I see that, I just disable them. But some people have them. And each time there is something happening, they receive a notification. That's because they did subscribe to it. They did subscribe to that notification. We're going to see that in code right now and by using RxJS. And don't forget, the mission here is to rebuild things from scratch, okay? So let's get going quickly here. Now that we have this idea of these 4 keywords, data stream, observer, async, and subscribe, we're going to make use of it. So what we're going to do here, we're going to create a data stream. Let's start with observable, and we're just gonna say new observable, and we're going to pass, as you can see here, observable, which comes from RxJS, takes something that has like a way to subscribe to it. So we're going to talk about it in a bit. So here it takes a function, and that function here, I'm going to use something called an observer, and it actually a simple function that inside that function we're going to do the logic of consuming the data coming in, right? Actually, it's not really consuming the data, it's about producing the data, right? So the step we're doing here with the observable is creating the data stream. That's basically what we're doing here, right? If we go back to our keywords, we said data stream was the first one. So here we're just creating the data stream. So the way we create that is indeed by using this function there, and an example here is, for example, to say observer, and you see we're using the keyword observer there, as I explained in the drawing. An observer is basically a set of 3 functions, and we see them, there are more here, but we're just going to focus on these 3. Next, error and complete. Next, error and complete. Next, we'll basically send whatever data that we have to the person who subscribed. Let's say here we're going to say hello Hackages. Okay, so we have that, and now if I run this program, I'm gonna have observable here. What is happening right now? We created a source of data, and with an observer, we're just basically sending data to anyone who subscribed to it. Now, if I go ahead and run it, npx here, it's just going to say nothing, literally nothing. What is missing? What's missing there is we actually have a system that produces data. It does produce data. However, there is no one listening to that. So the way you will do that here is basically say, I'm going to subscribe, right? And then when you subscribe, you pass an observer, and you're going to have a function next. And that function here, I'm just gonna pass console log like this, right? When I say an observer, so here, actually we're passing an observer, and that observer, if we define it, observer, we could define it this way, right? So if we go back here and run this again, we should be able to see that. We should be able to see that this time, it will actually show hello Hackages. We're kind of coming together with the keyword that we mentioned. We created a set of data here. We then create an observer to be used as data producer, right? So it's gonna help with production of data. So don't forget, the one that's gonna be, that is here, we're going to see that is the one that is kind of passed right there. So, and then it produces data with all these keywords there. And then we have the subscribe that is happening there. So now we kind of cover 3 of the main keywords: data stream, observer, and subscribe. How about async? Okay, so let's do something really interesting here. Instead of just saying hello Hackages, what we're going to do, we're going to produce data literally over time, and we could actually make sure that that data is produced in some interval that is not really like regular, right? The idea here is we're going to do that using a simple counter. So let me have a counter here. We're gonna give it an initial value of 0. I'm just gonna say counter, and then set interval like this, and set interval takes a function here. So let me do that, and I'm gonna give it an interval of 1 second, right? So once I do that, I basically have my set interval working well here, and what I need to do is to make sure that each time a new data is being produced by that set interval, I want to pass that down to subscribers. So the way I will do that is just to say observer dot, we're going to call next on it, and I'm just going to do counter plus plus. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing right here. And I will make sure that if this program stop working, I want to send an observer dot complete as a way to say that, hey, we're done. If something happened there, we're done. But actually this is not that correct. We come back in a few seconds. Let's see what we have. We're going to run that. And now we see that it goes, hopefully something happens. No, so we have something that is missing right there. So let's check that. So we're saying that we have subscribe here, we have a counter, and then we're calling next on each of the interval right there. Okay, so let me do that. And then let me make sure that we can actually do counter plus plus here. That should have worked. So what do we have? Still nothing, still nothing. Let me try again. We created a counter. We have a set interval right here that every second it will call this, and then we have a next function that is being called. So, and then let me remove this for now because actually I have a complete right there. So that could simply be the issue right now. So it's working. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see, I want to make sure that you saw what just happened there. We had a complete there, and the complete is basically a way to say stop it. Stop it before it even started. We already call complete right there. So it's still working, it's still growing, and that stream of data, it's asynchronous, right? Every second, so it means that you have to wait for it, right? And we said every second here, but I could put it like every 3 seconds, right? And then we're going to have exactly the same mechanism here, like every 3 seconds. We're gonna see 0 right now, and then every 3 seconds. We're gonna see 1, and then it will just keep going. So we don't see it once again because we have that. And let me make sure that we have a version that is working right there. So 3, 2, we're gonna see 0 right now, and then it will just keep doing that every 3 seconds. So we finally cover the 4 main elements there: data stream, observer, async, and subscribe. Now, what we just had here, we didn't see how to stop this stream of data. So let's actually make that happen. The way I'm going to do that, I'm going to use a set timeout. And with set timeout, what we're going to say is after 2 seconds, when we actually subscribe here, we end up with a subscriber. All right, and what we're going to do is to say, hey, subscriber dot unsubscribe. So that's basically what we're trying to do here. We're saying, hey, whenever that after you subscribe, I want you to unsubscribe 2 seconds later, right? So if we do that, I want to bring this back here at 1 and probably give it a little bit more time here. So if we go all the way here to see the entire piece of code, we're going to have something that looks like this. And by the way, let me just add a quick console log here that say unsubscribed. So let's run that, and we're going to see that it will go say 0, 1, 2, and then it does unsubscribe right there, and the program will stop. So as you can see, we actually have this thing that unsubscribe, but something we just did there that is not all right is the fact that in our subscription, when we unsubscribe, we didn't clean up the data producer because it's still working underneath. It's still working. So the way you will do that, and the way this thing is handling that for you, is basically saying, let's get the ID of that interval here. And then at the end of this, we're going to return an object that has an unsubscribe function. And in that function, we're going to do something that looks like this. We're just going to make sure that we clear interval and we pass that ID. And now I can call observer.complete. By doing so, now I made sure that the moment this thing is being called, it's going to clear out the interval, and then we should be good to go here. So let's try that again. So hopefully these concepts are kind of clear for you, and you see now that's basically stopped. It's like, hey, I'm done, and then it clears the program. These concepts here are fundamental for you to understand reactive programming. Now we're going to add one more layer on top of it. The thing that we see right here, that we pass here, I'm gonna give it a name. It's a function that we're passing in right here. I'm gonna give it a name called producer. It produces data. And by the way, the thing it was producing right there was the interval producer. That's basically what it was doing. Each interval it was producing that data. Let me move that here at the bottom and then create a function called like this, and then we can actually pass whatever we had here. I'm gonna move it there and then put it like this. That thing is getting the right element there, and now we have, I just moved that into a function, gave it a name, and then we could actually see better what happened right there. What needs to be done here is, well, we're going to type this in it's called an observer, so let's give it a name right there. And an observer is actually something that you need to give it a certain type like this. You need to type it. So let me copy this and go here and make that happen. And then that counter, now we could say that it's an observer of a number, because we know that that's what we're dealing with here. Actually, we don't need this. There you go. We don't need this. We know that that's a number that we're dealing with, meaning that the observer will be handling numbers underneath, right? And that interval is being passed right here. So what is the complaint we have is, did you mean interval? Yeah, I probably mistype it somehow here. Yeah, that's correct. That should be much better. Now, as you can see, this is much cleaner. And if we keep running it, it should be working really well. Okay, so we probably have a typo issue there. Have unable to complete JavaScript declaration of a statement. Is it because, yeah, correct, we have a little typo here. Now that we have this, we're gonna move past this idea of like using RxJS. The next step is commenting these out. Don't freak out. That's basically where I wanted to get you. I want you to see this part. We're going to uncomment that code just like I did right now and try to make it work. All the concepts are there. We talk about 4 elements and we're going to apply them in this part. And I really want you to keep in mind that we put a producer here, which produce interval. And then we say that, hey, that thing is a function that takes an observer, something of type observer, and then within that observer we do some logic to produce data with observer.next. That's how we produce the data. And whenever we're done, we make sure that we return something that's going to clean up our data creation tool. So let's do that. Right now we're gonna create a class. We're going to call that observable, right? So now you see already the red part is gone here. Now let's deal with the next one. So we use a class here. Since there is a new keyword, it means that here we need to use a constructor, and that constructor is going to take a producer. Okay, so what is a producer? A producer is basically what we saw right there. It's this thing that takes an observer and return something that has an unsubscribe function, right? So we can quickly type that. We say here a producer that is being passed here. So I'm going to create an interface called producer, and that interface, what we're going to do is to say it takes something that is an observer, right? And what is an observer? So interface observer, and then right here we're going to have a next function that doesn't do really much here, and then do the same thing with error and complete. And what we know with the observer, what we know is it takes a value here. The value we don't really know. I'm gonna give it a type T like this, so we have something that kind of reflect what the same idea of this. So that's kind of the signature that we have for it here. Let's bring this together. We're gonna have a producer that takes that because we need it right here. These are basically the two interfaces. They're here. I'm going to move them all the way at the bottom because we don't really need them here. I want to keep this part really clean so we see exactly what is happening. So if we go back to the producer, we said the producer is this. It's a function that does that, and then is going to return something that has a subscribe function, and this one is going to be a function, and as a function it doesn't return much at this stage, right? So now if we go back here, we can now say that this one is a producer, right? So that's basically the main idea here, which means that here we can actually use this. So it's coming together nicely. It's coming together nicely, and that producer returns something. Now let's continue one more level here. The next step is to make sure that we have a subscribe, and we're just gonna create a subscribe here, right? And what does a subscribe take as an argument? It takes an observer that we already created right there. We're just gonna use it this way, right? So we have a subscribe and an observer, and everything seems to be really, really good. So now, what are we missing? What are we missing for this entire system to work? Let's check the errors that we have. Here it's basically saying that, hey, that thing isn't, and then it's a function that is not assignable, a function that takes a number, and then, yeah, a subscribe missing the type unsubscribe, and I thought that's what I said here, but actually that is correct. It's instead of subscribe, it's unsubscribe. That's basically what we should have right there. And now we see that this line is okay, it's happy right now. Now we need to just handle that part here. So it says that when subscriber is called, it has a function unsubscribe with it. So that's basically what we're going to handle here. And the way we're going to handle that is we go up there, and we saw that on line 14, when we call the function subscribe, we pass an observer, and then we return something that has a subscriber, and that subscriber happens to have the unsubscribe thing. So which means that right here, we could simply do something that resembles this, return producer. So I want the producer to be available here. So I'm just gonna say this dot producer dot, and then we can just call it, and you see it takes an observer, and we can just pass the observer right here. If we did it well, we should see that that line is gone. It's gone here, right? And now we have something that is working. Why is this red? Why is this red? This one is red because we gave, what we passed right here is just, it's that observer that only has a next. So to fix it, not all the time, not often, people pass the entire set of things right there. So what you would like to do is to make sure that, hey, we going to make sure that you only passing things that are mandatory. So the way I'm going to phrase it here is to say this is going to be like that instead, and then this one is going to be like this, same thing. And then here we're just going to define it this way, right? And what we're going to do is to say like this one is like that. Let me go back here and then write this, right? And yeah, it's going to complain right now about complete and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's not really a big deal right there. So if we did it well, let me just make observer dot complete. All right, so if we pass that, we're just going to call that. Now, the entire thing is here. This is our function. So let's see if this works. We're going to run this, and then we see that it's still working. So I got you to the destination. In this video, my whole aim is, once again, as we do in this channel, in these courses, is to show you that one of the best ways to learn about these technologies is to rebuild them. And that's exactly what we did right now. We went from having RxJS all the way here at the top to recreating the observable part, to then create a data stream, consume it here. So we subscribe here to consume it, and we shown how you can leverage a set timeout to actually cancel the stream earlier. And then we actually create what I call a producer, like something that produces data. And in this case, it's the interval producer. And we even went up to the point where we actually created interfaces to type our things really well. That is part one. Now, I don't want you to watch this course and just go through the entire thing like that. Here, you have access to a set of exercises that do exactly this. We're gonna start with the interval producer. We kind of did it already, so just do it, right? Obviously, you will restart from the observable. And then in the next video, I will show you a little bit further the interval, and then you will re-implement that. And we're going to go this way for about 10 operators in RxJS. It will allow you to become just better at writing code, right? Even if you're not using RxJS, understanding this mechanism will just make you better. This is the end of this video. I will see you on the next one. You take care. Bye.